question the profitability of it. That's right, exactly.
They don't want to give it away. It looks
Yep.
like some of them might
Yep.
be donated.
Yep.
It's not relish building, it's like a piece of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Working through that right now. Yeah, with Letterman 10 on it.
Really?
Yeah. Restaurant lease. Yep. John's not gonna sell it. John Scarborough? Yeah.
He won't sell it.
I don't blame him.
Yeah. Good site.
It is a good site.
What is it? 2 acres?
1.5. Yeah. Yep.
Sexy C-store site.
It's a good seasonal site. I ain't gonna let that happen.
You don't think so?
Nah. Yeah. That is easy enough. That is easy enough. Hey, Rich, how you doing?
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the August 2017 City of Columbia Planning Commission meeting. I'd like to welcome all Planning Commission members, staff, and guests. At this time, I'd ask that everyone turn their cell phones and PDAs to the silent or vibrate mode. The administrator will now proceed with the roll call.
Mr. Tupper? Here. Mr. Stigermeyer?
Here.
Ms. Hartz?
Here.
Mr. Taylor? Here. Mr. Cohn?
Here.
Mr. Stern?
Here.
And Mr. Waits? Here. We have quorum.
Thank you. For those of you not familiar with the meeting format, I'd like to go over it right now. Applicants with requests before the Planning Commission are allotted a time of 10 minutes. This time should include, but is not limited to, an overview of the project, case history, and any pertinent meetings held regarding the request. This time also includes all persons presenting information on behalf of the applicant, such as attorneys, engineers, and architects. This time limit does not include any questions asked by the Planning Commission or staff regarding requests. Members of the general public are given the opportunity to address their concerns in intervals of 2 minutes. The administrator has a timer and will make presenters aware of when their time has expired. The Planning Commission reserves the right to amend these procedures on a case-by-case basis. The Planning Commission uses the consent agenda to approve non-controversial or routine matters by a single motion and vote. Examples of such items include approval of site plans, annexations, and street names. If a member of the Planning Commission or the general public would like to discuss an item on the consent agenda, then it is removed from the consent agenda and considered during the meeting. The Planning Commission then approves the remaining consent agenda items. The administrator will now read the consent agenda.
Your consent agenda this evening consists of the approval of the July 10th, 2017 minutes and 3 annexation and comprehensive plan map amendments, which consist of 334 Harbison Boulevard and 334B Harbison Boulevard, as well as 0.9 acres at the north-south intersection of South Carolina 277, and the annexation of a number of parcels as indicated in the agenda on Tall Pine Circle, as well as a comprehensive plan map amendment to modify the Urban Edge regional activity classification due to an oversight from a previous approval, and then 2 zoning map amendments which consist of 201 South Assembly Street and 5 Arsenal Hill Court.
Thank you. Are there any commission members or guests today who wish to have items on the consent agenda removed and then placed on the regular agenda? If not, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as proposed.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Consent agenda has been approved. We will now proceed with the regular agenda.
Your regular agenda, just as a notation from the original draft of the agenda that was sent out, there were 2 site plan reviews. Those have both been deferred by the applicant and will be returning at a future date, which leaves us with item number 9 on the agenda, which is a zoning map amendment for 523 Superior Street and South/South Superior Street, which is a request for a recommendation to rezone the parcel from light industrial M1 to general residential district RG2, and the recommendation from city staff is denial of that particular request, and the applicant is here.
All right. I'd like to remind everyone when you come forward, please state your name clearly before speaking. Any questions for staff from the commission? Then I'd like to have would the applicant like to come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob Fuller. I'm an attorney here in Columbia this afternoon representing Stratus Development Group out of Atlanta as the applicant on this application for rezoning of 6.17 acres at the northwestern end of Superior Street in Columbia from its existing zoning classification of M1 to an RG2 zoning classification. The property is also within the South Carolina Aeronautics overlay as it lies today, and we have information on all aspects of the pending application related to the things that are permitted and are not. We're here today to request the conversion of this particular piece of M1 property, which is a very comprehensive zoning classification, as you are all well familiar, perhaps the most permissive zoning classification of all that we have in the city of Columbia. The property that is under consideration is directly across Superior Street from what you know as the Rosewood Hills development or redevelopment area on Rosewood Drive and the intersection of Superior. the old Henley Homes project of some years back, and is now developed as residential property on Superior. The question of whether or not the aeronautics overlay would affect the rezoning application, we would submit to you that it does not adversely affect the zoning application. The company whose project manager is Jeff Kuhn, who is in the building today and could answer any specific questions if they came up regarding the application or any intricacies of its introduction to the community so far, has had conversation with the Aeronautics Commission. The proximity to Owens Field is actually almost a mile in distance. There are no height restrictions that this redevelopment of the property would utilize that would come anywhere close to being an effect of concern to the commission. I would not represent to you that the commission wants more development anywhere around an airport approach, but there is not anything prohibiting the development of the property by reason of height or actual use utilization on this application that would interfere with its legality or validity for prosecution. We submit to you that this property is wholly compatible with the neighborhood for its intended use. The proposed utilization of the property for residential. Could I ask you to pass those around? It is for the purpose of establishing on the property residential homes of patio style or some multifamily style individual homes that would be consistent with the RG density regulations for utilization of the entire 6 acres. Basically, they are in identity and in configuration and placement much like the existing Rosewood Hills, of perhaps a little higher quality standard than those that are already there. It would be a market-driven project, completely dependent upon the attractiveness and the utility of the property as it is developed for its acceptance by the community, and would be an asset, we submit, to the development and the redevelopment of the Rosewood community. We have the consent and approval of this project specifically by the Rosewood Community Council. Mr. Miller's letter of indication of that community organization's consent and delight at having this prospective development across the street from them or down the road from them is in place. The Columbia Housing Authority and the Rosewood Hills community organization have endorsed the property for this purpose, are conversant with what is being proposed and are in favor of it. One of the sellers is the Columbia World Outreach Church Corporation across the street, who will remain in place there, and the community church has endorsed the redevelopment of this property to this utility as residential as being completely consistent with what they envision for the neighborhood going forward. I would suggest to you that the language of the employment campus overlay that is imposed on this property currently says in a portion of its content that redevelopment and infill in these districts with more supporting uses like multifamily, residential, and other retail entertainment uses is encouraged. So while it has an M1 zoning that permits virtually anything other than residential to take place on the property, there is an identification here that in those communities that would develop within the employment campus configuration within that zone would be made more attractive by the intermix of other utilities and uses such as residential. We submit to you that the application has been vetted by the community pretty broadly and accepted widely. It is not an unusual application in that the style and quality of the homes is consistent with what has been put into the Rosewood corridor and the Rosewood neighborhood in the recent years that have seen its tide rising and the ships on it rising at the same time. Submit that it is not an unusual ask, but a very legitimate ask for the rezoning to become a contributing, compatible portion of the overall Rosewood community. It is proximate to the university, but it is not close to the university. It is a difficult property to imagine for many industrial or light industrial uses that would not be more adversely effective of the neighborhood than something of this nature. It's aligned beside the railroad track, which makes it inconvenient for many commercial or office operations to locate there. So this is probably a very good adaptive reuse or first use in some instance of the 6 acres that have been lying unattended and unwanted by much of anything in the neighborhood for a good many years. The request is before you. The staff recommended a denial of the approval, but without any discussion or identification of particular causes. We submit it is simply because it does not meet the exact parameters of the employment campus and the M1 zoning that it occupies. And what we are proposing to do would be actually an improvement to the neighborhood that is concurred in by the organized portions of the Rosewood community, and submit it to you. Mr. Kuhn here, representing Stratus Development Company out of Atlanta, has talked personally to many of the people and to the staff and to others in the community that are related to the proposition, and has had discussions that give them, I think, comfort with what they are proposing. And he could, of course, address any particular quality or style questions if you had them. But we submit it is not an unusual application, but it's one that will benefit the community and is appropriate for your recommendation to the council.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff? Would anyone else like to come forward and speak on behalf or not on behalf?
My name is Pastor Mike Gonzalez. I am the senior pastor of the church. That is the main portion that they are trying to buy there. And I just wanted to share with the commission that we've been here at this property for 18 years. Our purpose mainly to come to this area, not because it was a growing area, but because of Henley Homes. My heart and the heart of our church is to reach those that are broken lives and broken, just difficult, like areas of life, that people are dealing with. So we had a great success early on there when Henley Homes was there. We were doing a lot of food boxes, a lot of ministry to the families locally. But then, as you know, those families, were displaced with the changes that happened with Henley Homes. Our church has continued to grow slowly, but that area, just does not have any new growth. And what we have seen over the 18 years now is that the church needs to move because all of our membership actually drives in about 30 minutes or more to our location. We have no membership in that area whatsoever. Even though we work the area, we do a lot of outreach ministry. Our church is outreach oriented. And so I just wanted to speak on behalf of the developer as well and those who are trying to buy the property that, that our church is in favor of it. I mean, 100% of the sale, because it's going to help us to move into an area where our church and the demographics of our church are located mainly. This will also help us to grow in areas that are growing. So As we started, our purpose was to minister to the projects, but because the projects have been displaced and changed, it has changed a lot of the dynamics of our ministry there locally, and now our membership is no longer from that area. So I just wanted to speak on behalf, in a positive way, and hope that the commission will see this as a positive change for the area. I would also like to say that in the years that we've been there, we've also known that there has been, a lot of issues with drugs in the backside of the areas here, and we really feel that, that any kind of new development would help in cleaning that area up. And so, I think it's a positive all the way through. Just wanted to share that with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward and, I have a question for staff. Well, in looking at it, it appears to me that it would be a great improvement for the area. Why was it denied?
Well, I think that's detailed in the staff report in terms of the number of different plans that have been adopted by the city in terms of policy. So we have the 2002 Columbia Owens plan, which talked about a commercial and research option with some residential and research options. And then in 2012, we went through an over a year-long process with the Rosewood neighborhood. And this is one of those parcels that was discussed quite extensively of what should be there. My recollection of the conversations, which got to the recommendation that ended up in the plan that council, the Planning Commission and council approved, was the concept of an employment campus, because the neighborhood wasn't interested in solely residential. They weren't interested in solely heavy or light industrial. They wanted some sort of mix, something that was more research-based, that that particular whole area in there, and I'll flip to the next map, so that kind of purplish color, which goes from Rosewood Drive just a little bit past the edge of the map, that whole area would have some sort of mix. And so when you look at the uses that are allowed in the RG district, it's residential. So there's a lot of research and other types of things that this plan envisions that would not be permitted in that particular area. It's not a district that has a wide variety of options that could be there. And so it's that RG is really constricting the types of uses, and there'd been other proposals out there for multifamily and things like that, and that was 2012. So when that particular plan was adopted, and then our current land use plan, which you see on the screen, represents that particular vision. And so based on past policies adopted by Planning Commission and City Council, that's where we've been able to determine our recommendation.
Any other questions for? And I'd like to call, anyone else want to come forward? I'd like to call for a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request to rezone parcel from M1 to RG2.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes. Is everyone clear on the motion that passed? I see a lot of heads going, okay. If there is no other business, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned?
Second? Meeting, all in favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Good.
Good.
Dad's making a little news lately.
You know, Dad makes a little news here and there. Bunch of fluff.
They are.
I
I
wonder
just
what the crowd was
realized something. I just realized something. I built the church. I don't want to know about,
I gotta grab a lunch one. I want to catch up with you.
Yeah, absolutely.